Monica, I'm just curious about where your political journey started. How did you find your way into politics?
My way to politics was Europe, actually, in the sense that I was in the University of Florence, and I was already very interested in political sciences. I was studying political sciences, and I was already very active in a small political party. But then I got completely bored of that, and I met by accident already in my city, Brescia, somebody who was giving leaflets to call for a conference on a European civil service. And so I thought, wow, that's nice. And that's how I met the Federalist Movement, which is a movement that was created in the 1943, so in the middle of the war, and which had the main idea that in order to overcome wars, conflict, authoritarian regimes, it was necessary to unite Europe in a federal state. And I thought that that was a great idea that put together a lot of my also background and philosophical conviction about peace, but at the same time not having to be all the same and all the rest of it. And so I started to become very interested in this Federalist movement. And there was a youth movement in Florence where I was studying. We made fantastic experiences, which I really used a lot afterwards. And then when I moved to Brussels, it was because I became Secretary General of that Young European Federalists. And after that, I entered the parliament, and it was a dream really for me to work on the reform of the EU. And when you're talking about reform, you're speaking about institutions, you're speaking about relation of powers, and you're speaking about democracy. So the step towards being interested in electoral issues was quite short.
You just mentioned democracies. I think it's one of those words that's been used so often. What's your definition of democracy?
Well, democracy is, as you know, people of power of the people, for the people, and by the people. And in these words that seem to be a little bit theoretical, there is a world. And I think that we are now in a situation in which the way in which we define democracy allows us also to understand what is to be done in order to be done to create a world that is not only more democratic but also more peaceful and less divided. And I think that the division and the management of conflict is really at the core of my political motivation. So if you want, a democratic society is a society in which people are participating, are able to co-decide, but are also aware that there are procedures, regulations, laws, and representation that is given to some others, which are controllable, etc. So, in a way, democracy is a complex system, exciting, and it's basically the best we have. But on the other hand, it needs to be taken care of, never taken for granted, and it has to be checked, and it has to be cherished.
When we watch football, there are rules, there is a referee. Do you think those as countries, do you think these are similar for countries as we are for, let's say, a democratic football arena?
So I think that one of the biggest problems that we have today in the international arena is the fact exactly that you have the power and the strength, and lately also the military strength, is what makes the impact of states bigger. That is exactly why we need supranational systems and supranational regulation which are democratic and participative and which are transparent. And I think that this is my dream with the European Union. And this is why I believe that what the European Union does in its soft power, let's say, it's sometimes much more effective in helping democracy and in facilitating well-being even of outside countries more than other kinds of weapons, let's say, or of instruments. So I think that democracy is not something that should be limited at local or national level. The big issue here is to bring it also at supranational level and international level.
When you bring other nations to the table, with the support of the European Union or even the United Nations? What is that they could do better?
Well, I think that there are some challenges that are not limited to the local or national level. So when you have, for example, to deal with climate change or with famine or with major financial challenges or even with training your own people, you cannot do that only in your own village or in your own state. You need to become exposed also to the rest of the world. And there is a difference if the rest of the world is a jungle or the rest of the world is an ordered place where you play by the rules, where you have your say, and where people feel that they belong to that unity.
Let's talk a bit about how you met Fabio and what is it that excites you to get involved in this?
Well, I met Fabio in the best place, that is to say, a party. Many years ago, and I met him because he is he's a friend actually of a common friendship, a friend who is Paolo Marques, and he was my head of logistics in the two missions where I was head of the electoral observation mission of the European Union in Bolivia and Venezuela, and in both cases Paolo was there. And during our conversations, it was the first time that I had to do with elections, to be frank, and I was just thrown there by the commissioner of that time in 2006 to observe Bolivia, which was not very complicated, and Venezuela, which was a bit more complicated at the times of Chavez. And I remember telling him that it was all very interesting, all very nice, but we really had the impression of arriving there, do our job and leaving, okay, without much follow-up beside the paper where you would put recommendation. And I told him very distinctively, I think that the European Union should really think about doing something before but also after. In Bolivia, just to make an example, they had voted for a constitutional assembly. But in the way of managing this constitutional assembly, we would have been of great help, because a lot of cleavages, a lot of conflicts we had seen as well also in the European Union, and we had legal experts that could help, and I'm sure that they would have taken this expertise they would have gladly taken this expertise. And then when I finished, this was in 2006, we didn't really keep very much contact, but in the meantime I'd met Fabio, but just like that. And then in 2009, immediately after I finished my parliamentary term, he came up to me and said, listen, I thought about what you said, and in any case, we, with some friends like Fabio, we want to set up an organization to do exactly what you said that was necessary to be done. And I said, oh, is it true? And then we met, had a very nice lunch with Fabio, who explained to me the project, which took some time to be established. So I was recontacted again a few months after, and I had the chance of knowing also Malou Malou, which I found a very interesting and exciting personality, and I had never met before somebody like that. And I think, and since then we never left.
You were talking about conflict management. How did that come into play in your experience of conflict management to be a sustainable practice?
And so I think that conflict management is an inherent element of any democracy, of any democratic and free system. And elections is the highest moment, or is one of the highest moments in which people become citizens and choose. Of course, this is not the only moment. And I think that one of the developments that we have seen, even in the way in which electoral assistance is done over the last 10, 15 years, is exactly the idea that the election is important, but what is around it is perhaps, if not more important, equally important. That in our societies, there is no doubt about the electoral process. There is trust about the electoral process. Even if people don't trust their own government, they trust the electoral process. And this is sometimes something that is over-reliant and is a bit excessive, and that should be taken with a lot of care. And so by working in electoral assistance, I was able also to see some flaws in our own democratic systems.
What do you think are the strengths of an organization like the European Center for Electoral Support for these electoral bodies?
Well, first of all, that we are very passionate about what is done. We really believe in what is done. It's something that it's not always the case in big bureaucratic organizations. If ECES does not have the drive that it has, it basically dies, which is not the case of big organizations. And I think that that is an important issue. Then I think that there is a professionality of the team. And the fact that we have a director that is so strong that doesn't leave much around him in order to resist, let's say. And I think that that for me has been a big lesson to be able to work with such a team and with the personality of Fabio Bargiacchi. And I think that is also something that is a big value. But an individual is not able to do everything. And so I believe that the team spirit and the capacity of always improving, but also being able to change the people, because ECES has a lot of turnover of people and of young persons that arrive here without much background and then go away as grown-up professionals that eventually we will meet again in different responsibilities, which is also a very important strength of organization, its network. And also I believe that its reputation is important. The fact that we are there since 12 years now with so many projects realized is important, and also gives a history and gives a reliability that, of course, 10 years ago we didn't have.
The biggest mistakes they've done is that they don't groom the next generation of politicians. How do you foster in touching people and inspiring people as you go out into the field?
Well, as I said, I think that the best thing that we can do is to involve these people in the activities of ECES and of making these by making these activities more and more accessible. And this is a development I would like I saw over the years. Of course, if you are in a very small and very complex or poor country where people are really thinking about something else, that's more difficult. But still, you have people that you are able to involve in the whole process of assistance. And I believe that this training and showing by example, without being too theoretical, and when we come back, or when I come back and speak to commission officials or delegations, and I always underline, be aware that what you're doing is not just to give a little bit of money just for the sake of it, but it can be a game changer for the life of some of the people we are meeting. So be aware of the importance of, and how important it is to let us do our job in the best way, and to work in real partnership with us, because we can deliver, and we showed this.
Not that I want to stick to football, but it's your bread and butter, and it's a multinational team. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the advantage of having multinational personnel.
So this is indeed a very important element, and this comes from the fact that we work a lot with local people, with the people from the country where we are in. This is, of course, the case also of other organizations. This is not unique to ECES, but some of them stay. And this is also something that increases this multinationality, whilst at the same time keeping a very distinctive ECES culture, which is definitely European, but very open and very citizens of the world.
What do you think about the future of ECES to keep its course and to keep growing?
Winning stories are the ones in which people work in team, and even if you cannot really agree on everything all the time, but you enjoy living and working with each other and having a good synergy. And I think that this is something that, with all the ups and downs that this organization went through, is still there, and is something that represents a strength of the leadership of the organization, certainly. then it's the development of the organization according to what democracy will be all over the world. And I think that there is scope for an enlargement of what the electoral assistance is and for our capacity of following this enlargement.
What would you like people to say about ECES when they talk about it?
That it is effectively helping beneficiaries to deal with this very complex exercise, to understand that it's not only the fact of people going to vote, that is a major responsibility of them to make it work, because it's something that affects the life of everybody, and for the European Union to understand that there is a way of doing things by listening to the beneficiaries, by understanding that elections is not anything. It needs professionality, it needs professionals, but it also needs professionals that are very deeply linked to the European values and its objectives.
What's your thought about ECES being under close scrutiny and also under the direct coordination of the European Union when doing its work?
I actually think that, no, I don't think, but one of the most striking elements of the work of ECES, which for me is probably not that positive, is the amount of check and control and of bureaucracy that is put on us by the European Union procedures. And also there is a pressure on the staff because the Commission is getting more and more things to do with less people. And therefore it is obvious that the individuals that have to manage millions of euros are very scared that the project that they give should be absolutely perfect. But this puts such an amazing amount of things to do and burden and cost on the organization that I believe that at the end of the day, the quality of the project will be affected if it's not already affected. If you only concentrate on the financial controls and checks and perfection, which, by the way, we have delivered. We had no problems of any audit of considerable in a considerable way. But if you only concentrate on that, then you lose track of the real core of what we are called to do there, which is not to basically be the accountants, but be the ones who would help deliver good elections.